Republican Congressman Tim Burchett had an interesting little revelation about Congress during a conversation about Jeffrey Epstein's client list.
Well, let's be honest. And powerful people in this country, they write the big checks, and they're the ones out on the tarmac when the president comes and visits, and whichever party they're in, they always either out on the tarmac or in the private room. They're the ones that write the big checks. They don't care who's in. They hate this country. They hate what we're about, but they love their portfolios and they love their money more than they do anything else. And they protect it, and they protect the people that do that. And by doing so, the old honeypot, the Russians do that. And I'm sure members of Congress have been caught up. Why in the world would good conservatives vote for crazy stuff like what we've been seeing out of Congress?
Is he right about a lot of stuff? Yes. Is he right about everything? Absolutely not. But I'm going to say on that, well, let him cook. He's got a point. And what is that point? Well, powerful people do write big checks. That's not a conspiracy. It's called money in politics. It's called campaign contributions. It's called independent expenditures. And it's all thanks to corrupt members of the Supreme Court, for example, voting on things like Citizens United, the dismantling of the FEC. Yes, we still have the FEC, but do they actually do anything? Not really. And you have billionaires like Harlan Crow dumping gifts on justices like Clarence Thomas, which I'm sure has. They'll argue that it has absolutely no impact on the decisions that they have made whatsoever. Right. Now, as far as Burchett saying, well, I mean, why in the world would good conservatives vote for crazy stuff that we have? The reason that Congress votes the way that it does is because of the donors. They do it to help the donors because they work for the donors. Anything to help the billionaire donors, the giant corporations that give them money. That explains why the majority of Congress votes the way they do. That said, Burchett's then going to go off into, again, a little bit more of a conspiracy-minded rant on this one. That's where he was going with the honeypot stuff. And look, let me just say that before we get into it, he's not 100% wrong, but he's also not 100% right. So why don't we get into it a little bit further?
It's how it works. You're visiting, you're out of the country or out of town, or you're in a motel or bar in D.C., and whatever you're into, women or men or whatever, comes up and they're very attractive and they're laughing at your jokes and you're buying them a drink. Next thing you know, you're in the motel room with them naked, and next thing you know, you're about to make a key vote, and what happens? Some well-dressed person comes up and whispers in your ear, "Hey man, there's tapes out on you. Were you in a motel room on whatever with whoever?" And then you're like, "Uh-oh," and said, "You really ought not be voting for this thing." I mean, and what do? It's human nature. And, no man or no woman actually is an island, and they know what to get at. If it's women, drugs, booze, it'll find you in D.C. and in most elected offices. And that's what people of power and influence do. And it's just, I've been in this game my whole life. I spent 16 years in the state legislature in Tennessee and 8 years as county mayor. And now I'm in my 5th year of Congress. But it's just, the stakes are higher, but the game is still the same.
No, I love that. That sequence of events. Oh, yeah, you're sitting in a bar, you're having a drink, and suddenly you're in a motel room with them naked. Wait, what? Whoa. There's a lot of steps that happen in between that, right? Come on. But yes, does he say some things that I agree with? Well, yeah, of course. Do I agree with all of it? No. So let's get to the stuff where I think he makes a little bit of sense, where he makes some good points. Let's talk about the rumors of sexual impropriety being used against politicians. Do they get used against politicians? Of course. Yeah, of course. We've seen many of, presidential or congressional campaign derailed by allegations of, again, sexual impropriety. John Edwards, one of the great examples here within the last couple of decades. Then, of course, you have Anthony Weiner, Bill Clinton, Christian Ziegler, Newt Gingrich, Donald Trump. A lot of examples, again, with varying degrees of how effective those allegations were at derailing political campaigns. For Donald Trump, again, he goes around, went around saying, I grabbed women by the, and they let me do it, and had absolutely no effect whatsoever. And so, also with, again, Bill Clinton, the allegations against him, which I think are very credible allegations, and specifically speaking about Monica Lewinsky on that scandal, and then of course Christian Ziegler being the new one, with his wife Burchett Ziegler being one of the co-founders of Moms for Liberty, secretly being in like a three-way, and then there's allegations of rape there, and there's now apparently footage of that, cell phone footage of them having whatever, right? So yes, there is all sorts of, well, let me just let Charlie take it over here.
Sexual anarchy.
Yes, all over Congress. All over Congress. Everybody's doing each other, right? I'm not surprised. This is the least surprising secret in Congress, okay? Now, the thing that I disagree with is that, is it some sort of honeypot conspiracy theory operation like what the Russians are doing to people, by people who hate this country? It just happens to ensnare good conservatives. Well, you have an interesting, like a definition of what a good conservative is, right? Because if they're a good conservative, would they be really caught up in this sexual anarchy? I'm just saying. I mean, the next thing you know, like they're just naked in a motel room with somebody. Again, Republicans and Democrats have both been involved in sex scandals, and that happens because, not because of some weird conspiracy, but because they're people, they're human beings, and they make mistakes. Sometimes they think with the little head instead of the big one, okay? And, perhaps they might want to practice a little bit more self-control, around their interns. Maybe not cheat on their wife while they're giving birth to your kid or whatever. But to think that this is some deep state plot to target conservatives, good conservatives, in order to get them to vote how they want, no. I'm not saying that blackmail's never been used before. Of course it has, but I just don't think that this is an overarching plot by America-hating Marxists or people who are writing the checks. You know what I'm saying? What it is that usually it has to do with journalism, okay? You've got muckraker journalists set out there that, get their hands on some of this material. You have accusations by somebody who maybe saw something, like a staffer, or, again, speaking of a disgruntled staffer, one of them perhaps was a victim of this, that spoke out, and they get caught. And that happens. And the reason, of course, they get caught is because, well, you have these congressmen and women that are doing this in the first place. I don't think anybody's being tricked into cheating on their wives or, frequenting cocaine-fueled sex parties. No, those are choices that they're making. They're choosing to do this, to be in these situations, often knowing that they're engaging, especially when it comes to Republicans, in clear hypocrisy, okay? And they do it. Why does anybody do it? It's because they're getting away with it. They think they're going to get away with it, okay? And sometimes they don't. And so, is he right, though? Is there's some sort of culture in Washington, and not just in Washington, but I think any place where there's, people in power that have power over other people. Hollywood's another example where you can get away with these things. Abso-freaking-lutely. And do I think that there's, sex gets traded for favors, and sometimes political favors? Of course! And does it get used in blackmail? Of course! It's a tale as old as time. Everywhere has always had politicians and sex scandals, people in power sex scandals, whatever. But, here you have another Republican that is, again, outed, basically repeating the worst kept secret in the history of humanity, okay, that this is happening. But it does echo, again, accusations by Madison Cawthorn and former Representative George Santos, who may have said, actually, the only true thing he's ever said is that, oh yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on here, all sorts of
sexual anarchy.
I'm gonna dish. Please do. Please do. Let's hit some names, right? And they both happen to make those accusations. Well, Santos on the way out, and Cawthorn, well, that just helped him on his way out, because he wasn't before, until he started talking about those Republican cocaine-fueled sex parties. So, again, worst kept secret on Capitol Hill, But it is interesting that more and more Republicans are suddenly saying, yeah, this is actually happening.